Hey guys, what's going on? It is the Voice of the Nets podcast. I'm Chris Carino. You know, I don't know if Michael Koren knew it at the time, but the day that John Calipari was let go as the head coach of the Nets, Michael Koren's life changed. He was the radio color analyst at the time when this went down, when John Calipari coached his final game in Miami, and then the team was scheduled to play up in Toronto the next game. And Cal was let go, so they had promoted Don Casey to be his interim head coach. And they had fired most of Cal's staff as well, who were loyal to him. So Case, it didn't have anybody to sit on the bench. I mean, he might have had one guy. So they went to Mike, who was traveling with the team to do radio. And they said, Mike, we need you on the bench. And I got a call. I remember I was back in the office. I was the producer and pre- and post-game host, and said, we need to take Mike. And that was it. Mike never came back to the radio. He finished out the year there. He ended up on Byron Scott's staff, ended up being a coach on those teams that went to the NBA Finals. And, a Jersey guy, Big Mike, who is from Jersey City, Hudson Catholic, ended up going on to North Carolina, playing for Dean Smith. You had a guy like Dean Smith coming to Jersey City to recruit Michael Koren to North Carolina, drafted in the first round by the Nets, spent most of his playing career with the Nets, ends up being a Nets broadcaster, a Nets coach for some of their greatest teams in franchise history, and now spends his time down at the Jersey Shore. And we hope to get Mike in Brooklyn a little bit more. I haven't seen Mike in Brooklyn much, but it'll be nice to do that. I hope he's one of the great storytellers that I've encountered over the years, and always brings a smile when you're around Michael Koren. So here today, a guy that I did my first Nets game on the radio with when he was still the color analyst, and I was filling in one game for Bob Papa. Mike and I did the first time I did a Nets game on the radio. It is my pleasure to bring you our conversation here with Michael Koren on the Voice of the Nets. Michael Koren with us. Mike, I heard that you were in Philly in the Sweet 16. I was actually there. And Bird, Iron Eagle, told me, he says, you know, Mike's here, and I never got a chance to see you. I wish I could have seen you that day, but I thought about you because you had the This Is Your Life Michael Koren. You had University of North Carolina in the Sweet 16, and you had St. Peter's out of Jersey City, which is where you're from. And I know when they played each other in the Elite Eight, I know where your allegiance is. I mean, you're baby blue, but it had to be nice to see Jersey City represented on the biggest stage in the college basketball world.
Absolutely, Chris. As a kid, I would go to the Jersey City Armory and watch the St. Peter's Peacocks play against the likes of Niagara, Long Island University, Manhattan, teams like that. And it was a fun basketball, and I never forgot that. I go North Carolina between my first and second years. Eddie Fogler was an assistant coach in North Carolina, goes to St. Peter's and wants to know if they'll let me go in and work out. They were great. I would go in and work out in the gym and lift the weights they had there and all that stuff. So obviously St. Peter's, my brother went there, graduated from St. Peter's College. A cousin of mine, Joe McCullough, went there, who used to take me to those games when I was young. So I had I couldn't believe, first of all, they beat Kentucky. And then they get by Murray State, and then of course they beat Purdue, and Carolina gets by UCLA, and now North Carolina is going to play St. Peter's. I never thought it was possible, growing up so close to St. Peter's College. So I was rooting for them, but as you said, I'm a UNC guy all the way, and I was thrilled that they won the game and would get to the Final Four.
But the Sweet 16 night, that was fun because you're able to root for. I mean, did you not? I mean, you probably were rooting for St. Peter's to beat Purdue.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
I mean,
wasn't that so much fun to be in the building that night? It was great.
It was really incredible. I mean, it was really a Cinderella story, as they say in the tournament. And they just were hitting shots, and And then you can see it as each minute went by, the confidence level of the team went up. And I give Coach Holloway a lot of credit for that. He had that team prepared. I remember talking to Ian and Jim before the Carolina played St. Peter's, and they said Holloway is a tremendous coach. His players listen. He's in depth with everything. I said, man, if we play these guys, they could maybe take us. But I thought that game, Chris, was won in the first 5 to 10 minutes. So the shots that St. Peter's was getting in the tournament, they were hitting those shots. For some reason against North Carolina, I'm not going to give it all Carolina's credit there. They missed a lot of shots and got down. And it was just too much for them to come back. But then we go on and beat Duke again and then lose to Kansas after a big lead at halftime, as you know.
But that was probably, I always felt, I know a lot of Carolina fans, including an 18-year-old son who's a huge Carolina fan, who, and we talked to Dayron Sharp recently, a Carolina guy who's on the Nets, and it was almost like, all right, you didn't win the championship, but you beat Duke in Coach K's last game in the national semifinal. That was like your national championship.
Well, you beat them at Cameron, a couple weeks before that, and then really, Carolina played one of their better games. And then you go, it's going to be tough to beat them again in the Final Four. But, I mean, Love hits that shot at the end, and they just were good. I mean, Carolina hit their stride at the right time. I mean, sometimes you get to the tournament and you're on a downer. Sometimes you get to the tournament and you're going up. And they certainly were going up. But to beat them twice like that was tremendous for our program.
It really was. And you mentioned Jim Spinarkle, who's a Duke guy who probably won't appreciate this conversation right now, but he was your teammate at you're a year older, maybe a couple years older, at Hudson Catholic in Jersey City.
Jim was a year older than me. Yeah. Hudson
and
Catholic,
you guys are at Hudson Catholic in Jersey City. What's the Jersey City at that time? What was the Jersey City basketball scene like? We hear so much about Brooklyn basketball scene, New York City. Jersey City is just a little long jump shot across the river. What was that scene like when you were there at that time with Jimmy?
Chris, it was very competitive. I mean, think about this. I'll put it in this perspective. Jim and I, he's a senior, I'm a junior. Now, you got two future pros. We didn't know that then, but as it turned out, we both make the NBA. And in our league, we lost 3 games. In our league, in Hudson County.
Wow.
I mean, that's how competitive and good the players were. And every game was tough. Your home games were tough, and obviously you went on the road. And to play in some of the schools in Jersey City and Hudson County was very, very difficult.
I went to Fordham, and my freshman year, before my freshman year, I'm walking on campus for the first time for orientation. And I'm by myself walking up this road, and I see this gentleman walking toward me from about 100 yards away, but I see powder blue pants. And he gets closer and closer, and I'm saying to myself, is that Dean Smith? And he gets closer and closer, and it was Dean Smith walking down the road, and we cross each other. And I just remember this was like seeing someone had come down from basketball heaven and was walking down there. He was angelic. He glowed as he walked by. And I remember I'll never forget that moment of seeing him. I don't know why he was there. I think it might have been a camp or he was speaking. But how would you remember the first time you met Dean Smith? And I'm sure that was part of the reason you ended up at Chapel Hill.
Yeah, the first time I met Coach Smith was the summer between my 3rd year and 4th year in high school. And he came to where I grew up, Hudson Gardens, and for a visit. And he brought this blue book, about North Carolina basketball, and he sat with me and my mother and we just talked. He's very engaging. And I can remember, talking to him a little bit about basketball, but he said to my mother, Rose, I can promise you that if Michael does come to North Carolina, he will graduate in 4 years. Now, I'm Italian. You tell my mother was born over there in Italy.
Despite your name, O'Corin, Mama Rose is Italian.
Yeah. Mama Rose, Torchio was her maiden name. So, so you tell an older Italian lady that your son's going to graduate from University of North Carolina, that's going to resonate. And it certainly did. And then I make my visit down there, and obviously that's where I want to go. But and the thing is, Chris, if you tell the story, I can guarantee you this: if you introduced yourself to Coach Smith, if you saw him 10 years later, he would say, "Hey, Chris Carino, how are you doing?" Wow. He would remember your name. That's how sharp he was.
And I know the affinity, all you guys that have played for him. Nobody ever has a bad word about playing for Dean Smith. I mean, I walked into the press room in Atlanta prior to the national semifinal this year, and I see Vince Carter. And, Vince has got the powder blue, and I'm like, come on, you got to have something. And he showed me his socks. He had North Carolina socks. And then he's wearing a pair of Jordans that say Coach Smith on them. Like he had gotten this special gift from them, from Coach Smith. So I know the affinity, and you still refer to him as Coach Smith. And I mean, he would it be safe to say he was one of the most influential people in your life?
Oh, absolutely. My father died when I was like 11 years old, and I never really had a father figure. So I get to college, and I did have that in him. But he treated all his players the same. And the thing is, when you graduated and you left Carolina, that's when you really got to know him as a friend and as a mentor and things like that. He would call you. Then I get into coaching. As a player, he would, he said, "Mike, I got a chance to watch a game. I didn't think you ran the floor very well. You could run the floor better than that." Or, he had maybe, on that jump shot, maybe follow through a little bit more. Or, he had something. Yeah. And then as a coach, I can remember talking to him, and he would always tell me, whoever the head coach was, he'd say, "Mike, you should tell Byron Scott, maybe you want to work on those late game situations a little bit more. Because you know how the NBA game is, it comes down to like a last possession. You got to get the ball in and get fouled. And he said you can't do enough of those late game situations. So he always was a coach too, but he always was a father figure in his own right. Also,
we're going to get into your coaching later on, but did you find when you were coaching that he was kind of speaking through you at times?
Oh yeah. Like I remember we would have meetings, and I would say, "Guys, how about if you want to work on press offense, how about we play a free throw game?" And they said, "What are you talking about, free throw game?" It's something we did at North Carolina where everything was numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 was a point, 2 was a shooting guard, 3 was a small forward, 4 power forward, and 5 a center. And I said, "This is how it works. The blue team will shoot a free throw, the one guard, and you go up the court. You come back down, and then you play 3 times, and then you stop it no matter what, and then you let the other team shoot. The game is scored, and you play when it you make a free throw, good, boom, that's 1 point. You hit a jump shot later on, it's 2, or you hit a 3, it's 3, and you play 1 through 5. The blue team gets 1 through 5, and the red team will get 1 through 5, and whoever wins wins. And you can work on your offense, you can work on your press offense, you can work on defensive rebounding off a free throw, which is so important." And they said, "Wow, what other things do you have?" And I added like some other things we used to do, like shell shooting. Think about shell. Shell is 4-on-4, and you work on your defense. And the other guys would be standing around. And I said, "Well, how about we do this? You have shell, and then the other team, you had 3 teams now. See, 3 teams of 5 or 3 teams of 4. And instead of that group just watching, just have them go down with another coach and assistant and have them work on shots. And then you just rotated them around like that." And he helped the Nets out a lot, because a lot of the things we did in North Carolina, we did, with the teams we had when I was an assistant for Byron, and we did a lot of the stuff, and Byron loved it. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we added.
Well, we'll go through your journey to get to that point. You were a 2-time second-team All-American at UNC, All-ACC player. You find yourself in the Final Four, 1977, right? You end up playing the final against another Jersey City guy, right? Jim Boylan was at Marquette.
Yes.
You're a freshman, I think. You're in the finals, right?
Right.
With North Carolina. And interesting enough, we talked about St. Peter's before. I think Butch Lee's son, right? Butch Lee's son was on St. Peter's this year.
Yes, he was.
He was on that Marquette team.
And he really hurt us in that game, Chris.
Yeah.
Butch Lee was fantastic. All-around player. He just could score. He was a good defender. He ran the team well. And Jimmy Boylan, the guy you just mentioned too, great friend of mine. became a pro coach too. And
Yeah.
every time I would meet Jimmy out there, in Jersey City or on the road in the pros, he'd always let me know that they won that game.
and you never got, so you never won a national championship with Carolina. No. You played in the Final Four. You got to the NBA Finals a couple of times as a coach. I think about this when I'm watching, what Boston went through this year, playing Golden State. And even though they're a young team and up and coming, and, you have a 2-1 lead in the finals and you got a game at home. You think, well, we're a young team. It'll come around. We'll have our chances again. You don't know if you're ever going to get that chance again, right? It's so valuable.
Absolutely. And they'll think about that now, being up 2-1 with a game in your house. And then, give Golden State credit for winning it. But there's no guarantees. You know how hard it is to win in the NBA? I mean, it's tough to win. I mean, the players, I remember when Eddie Jordan took the head job in Washington, and I go with him as an assistant. And he hired his college coach, Chris, Tom Young, great guy, who had just passed away not too long ago. And I can remember now, we're in an exhibition game. I forget who, I think we were playing Atlanta or somebody. And Tom, thought he knew the NBA game. And we're watching, and it's like the third quarter. And towards the end of the third quarter, he hits my knee and he goes, "Mike, these players are good." I said, "Tom, 8 of the guys out on the floor won't even make the team this year."
Yeah, it's a preseason game.
This is a preseason. He said, "What?" I said, at least 8 of those guys won't make a team. He said, "No." I said, "Tom, wait till you see the real guys." The level, it just goes up. He couldn't believe it. Then, like midway through the season, like first of all, he really got fatigued because the travel and everything, and he said he couldn't believe how good the players were at that level.
Yeah, and think of yourself. I mean, you get drafted now 6th overall in 1980 to the Nets. And now you realize, hey, well, I was in the ACC, I played North Carolina, but there's a lot of good players.
Oh, every night, Chris. Dr. J, Larry Bird, Adrian Dantley. I mean, you might remember Bernard King. I mean, I could go on and on. I mean,
how many did you hold Bernard to on Christmas Day that one time?
I held him to 51. and he fouled me out like middle of the third quarter. So,
but you won the game. But you won the game.
No. And it wound up George Johnson. We used to call him the equalizer, Big George. He was 6'11", his arms would go from here to the next town. He wound up covering Bernard, did a great job on him. We always seemed like we always played the Knicks on Christmas Day back then.
Yeah, they would traditionally play that early game. Right. And then you could just jump on the path and head back to see Mom Monroe.
That's what I did. Christmas dinner. Yeah. And I remember, I'm glad I was with one of my friends who was a tough guy in Jersey City, Gibby Lewis. And we were coming back on the train. And as soon as we went under the tunnel to head back to Journal Square, which would be my stop, a couple guys tried to rob my bag, and we held them off. They wanted that net bag. Remember the big box net bag they used to have? It wasn't as like, these guys don't know how good they have it now. They don't have to carry a bag. They don't carry anything. Everything's done for them.
Nobody's getting on a PATH train to go back.
No, they're getting on a PATH train to go to 33rd Street, right? To go play Madison Square Garden.
Oh man, and that those early '80s Nets teams that you were on, you guys knock off the defending champion Sixers that one time. You played with a guy like Buck Williams, who to me should be in the Hall of Fame.
Terrific, absolutely.
Yeah. What kind of a player? What kind of a teammate was Buck?
Buck was how could I say? He comes in. Now I'm a second-year guy. He's a rookie now and comes in. And I played against him for 3 years in college, so I knew all about him. Him and Albert.
Yeah.
And at
Albert
Maryland,
King
right?
At Maryland, yeah.
Yeah. And Buck was 6'8", 6'9", chiseled, and one of the toughest guys between the lines that you'll ever meet, and one of the nicest guys outside the lines that you'll ever meet. Classy guy. I mean, well-spoken. I mean, just a really, really terrific guy. But once he stepped on that floor, there was no friendships. And he was so good. Well, it's hard to say now with Jason Kidd and Vince and the guys that came on after, but he was, for a long time, the best net player, excluding Dr. J and the ABA. that the Nets were so fortunate to have him.
And in '84, you guys, so that you win your first playoff series in franchise history, beating the defending champs and the Philadelphia 76ers. But talk about almost a missed opportunity. You're up 2-0 in the best of 5. It comes back to the Meadowlands. They force a game 5, but you're up 2-0. I mean, you almost blew it there, right? I mean, you had the chance to put them away.
Yeah, you know the story.
Yeah, I know. That's why I want to lead you in, because I love when you tell the story.
The story is we're rolling now. We win the first 2 games at the Spectrum in Philadelphia, in a hard place to play. Moses Malone, Dr. J, Mo Cheeks, Andrew Toney. Yeah. I mean, just speaking of Bobby Jones. Yeah, Bobby Jones, a very good friend of mine, another North Carolina guy. And we go toe-to-toe with them and steal 2 games down there. And we come back home, and we're rolling, Chris. We're playing great. I mean, you know, we're a deep team, and we're going pretty well. And we're leading, you know, it was, I want to say, into the 4th quarter. And there's a timeout. Billy Cunningham, the coach of the Sixers, calls timeout. And we had Duncan, the crazy mascot. Yes. And we're up a few. And what do you know? Duncan, the mascot, goes there with a broom and starts sweeping by the Philadelphia 76ers bench. And me and Mike Jaminski, good friend Mike Jaminski, great guy. We go, don't do that to Dr. J and Moses and them. And sure enough, I think they scored the next 50 points of the game. And then they blew us out game 4. And then we have to go back down to the Spectrum, down the Turnpike, on the bus. Tell you guys now, we went down on the bus to the Spectrum.
That they still do at a convenience.
They do? Okay, good. I thought they'd take a train, or, you know, they get all that. That's right. But then we hold them off, and we wound up winning. And Buck was our best player, but Michael Ray Richardson was the best player in that series. He was 6'5" guard, you know about him, and he did everything. He defensively, he held Tony in check, and offensively he went nuts, and it really was the reason why we won that series.
Michael Ray, from a skill standpoint, I mean, as good as there ever was at that. Because you talk about the modern day, they want guys that are like 6'5", two-way players that can guard people, that can shoot, that can make plays. I mean, he was that guy in the 80s. We know, you know, he had some issues and never kind of achieved that Hall of Fame potential that he probably had. I'm sure you probably played with a lot of guys that, you know, maybe, you know, what if kind of guys.
Yeah, there's a lot of them, but it takes so much to stay at that level. Yeah. And Michael Ray it was an addiction, and he couldn't shake it, and it cost him a lot in his career. But for that particular series, Chris, he was tremendous. Yeah, absolutely tremendous.
You guys ended up losing to the Bucks, I believe, next after that. And then that team kind of had good teams, and it kind of broke up. You mentioned a couple of your really good teammates there, but one guy you ended up playing with that was always one of my favorite. I'm so fortunate. I was a kid during that time in the 80s, so I watched all you guys as a kid. And then as I started working with the Nets, a lot of you guys would come back and I do events with guys. So I got to know a lot of the guys. I've gotten to know Buck. I've gotten to know Otis Birdsong. One of the guys that I really was fond of was Daryl Dawkins. In fact, I have a picture here in my office of me and Daryl. I used to do so many like events with him, and you know, he passed away. But give me one or two of your favorite Daryl Dawkins memories.
Well, Daryl was, you know, he could have been one of the best. He had the talent, and the thing is, if he scored 35, great. Great, I scored 35. If he scored 3, great, I scored 3. You know what I mean? He was that type of player. Yeah. So we were on a 17-day road trip out west, played like 7 games out there. And we're in the middle of it, and we're working out at some like high school in Salt Lake City. And Daryl just he didn't feel like practicing. So he goes to me, he says, "O'Corn," he says, "I'm gonna tear that rim down. I ain't going full court today." So we're in a layup line just to loosen up. And he slams it pretty good, but nothing happens. He goes, "All right, good. I'm going to get it the next time." Sure enough, he comes the next time and bang,
Oh, man.
Glass all over the place, the rims over there. And that's it. We stayed on the half court. They cleaned that up. So Daryl was happy about that. I said, Daryl, next time, just say your back hurts or something. And, Stan will let you practice. Don't worry about it.
You're going to break the rim here.
Yeah. He just was tremendous. I mean, the stories, I can't tell some of the stories,
I know one that I always love, and I want you to tell us it. So you guys play, I think it was on an Easter, or was it Christmas, where you end up, your mom ends up bringing everybody back to your house.
To the Hudson Gardens where I grew up, the projects. So I forgot about this one. So my mother, again, she says, Michael, how could you be playing on Easter? You should be home with your families. What are you playing on Easter for? I said, Ma, that's the way it works. And ironically enough, we were playing the Sixers. So she says, listen, the guys that aren't married or the guys that are by themselves, have them come over and I'll cook for them. Ma, you sure? She says, yeah, I'll cook. So I said to Otis, I said to Daryl, and Bobby Kadich, who was a reserve player for us. And I think those three, and maybe one more, I forget now. But we, Easter Sunday, we all wore suits and we were dressed nice. And so we wound up beating the Sixers. It was a close game, but we beat them. So I said, listen, I'll drive you guys in. You don't know where you're going. And then I'll take you back to the Meadowlands, get on your car. They said, fine. So I drive the guys in, and my mother has a big spread. I mean, a lot of Italian food, but she made some other things too. She had chicken, she had pasta, roast beef. She really did it right.
Yeah,
it went all out, and because she felt so bad that these guys wouldn't be. Yeah,
tried to think of everything. Yeah.
So we sit down and we say grace, and Big Daryl says, "Call my mother, Mama Rose." He said, "Mama Rose, Mama Rose. Everything looks beautiful. Everything looks spectacular." He goes, "Do you have any Tabasco sauce?" My mother, like, her face drops. She says, "Oh, Daryl, I'm so sorry. We really don't use that." He goes, "Mama Rose, not to worry. Not to worry, not to worry." Now, he had a beautiful suit on. He opens his jacket, goes into that side pocket in your jacket, and pulls out a big bottle of Tabasco sauce. I told my mother, I thought she was going to faint. She couldn't believe it.
She was ready to send you to the store.
Yeah, she was going to send me. She said, "Michael, I'll go get some across the street." I said, "Ma, they don't have Tabasco sauce." No, he had it. And he put it on everything. Oh, my gosh. What a day that was.
He's the kind of guy, when I think about him, it's sad now because he's gone, but when I think about it, I just smile. I just smile.
He could, any city we went to, airports, people loved him. Absolutely loved Big Daryl.
Yeah. Your playing days get done, Mike, and what led you to broadcasting? You ended up being the radio analyst for a number of years. What led you to that?
This is what happened, Chris. My third year in the league, December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas, I go to the basket against the Cavaliers, and I get undercut by World Be Free. I remember these things. I don't know what I have for breakfast, but I remember this stuff.
Sure.
And I fall, and I break my wrist, fractured my radius bone right here. And so Larry Brown was the coach. And now I go get to the hospital. They fix me up, and I come back. And Larry comes to me and says, "Listen, I want you to travel with us. I want you to, stay with the team." And I said, "Sure, whatever you want, Larry." He says, "Well, there's only one broadcaster. How about you go up and the game, just be the color analyst or whatever." I said, "Sure." And Chris, I'm telling you, I had the best time. It was so much fun. And so after my career's over, Jimmy Lamparello, I know you would know the name.
Yeah.
And approaches me and says, "How about you, how about you do some broadcasting?" I said, "Jim, I would love that." And I did it. I was telling Tom, I was Bob Papa, Iron Eagle, and you.
Yep.
So you guys are famous now, and I'm just a little guy in Wildwood, New Jersey now.
That's not true. I did.
No,
I
so much fun.
I remember my first game I did, 1999, late season, like April. Amy Shear, remember, was our boss.
Sure,
back
Amy,
then.
sure.
And Amy, remember, you were working with John Sterling when Bob couldn't be there. And when Bob Papa couldn't be there, but there was he had a Yankee game on the West Coast. So Amy said to me, I was doing pre and post, and I was working in the office. She's like, all right, you're getting your chance. And I remember doing a game, it was like against the Knicks, late season, 98, actually, 97, 98 season.
Okay.
And I just remember doing the game and you and I going over to the, maybe the Grasshopper for a little post-game conversation.
I've been known to do a few of those.
Yeah. And I remember, and I always remember you saying this, Mike. You said to me, you were like, and again, this is the way you look at the game. You said you were like, Chris, I work with a lot of these guys because you had done a ton of games. They used to bring in like guest guys all the time. So you work with a ton of guys, and you were like, Chris, you have it. He goes, the game has a certain speed, and I know whether or not the play-by-play guy can keep up with it or not, and you got it, and you could do this. And I still always think of that, Mike. I always think, I've been doing the Nets for 21 years, but that was a great little confidence boost for me at the time from you.
Good. And it was all true, Chris. And you look at you. Look what you're doing now. It's tremendous.
Well,
I'm thrilled for you.
So I appreciate it. And I had so much fun working with you over the years.
Can I add a story to that about the speed of the game?
Yeah.
Okay. So now, remember the lockout season?
Sure.
They fired John Calipari. The Nets fired Calipari and a lot of his staff. And Don Casey takes over. And we're up in Toronto. And I'm doing radio with Bob. And Case comes over and says, listen, I need some help. I said, I got some guys coming that are going to be my assistants, but they're not here yet. Would you mind being on the bench?
Yep.
I said, Case, whatever you need. And I called Amy, and I got permission to do it. And I'm sitting on the bench up in Toronto. Chris, doing analysts, I had no problem following the game.
Yeah.
Once I sat on that bench, I couldn't keep up with the game. It was so fast for me.
Why do you think that was?
I have no idea. I guess my mind was maybe thinking about too much. I don't know. But I had trouble staying with the speed of the game. I mean, I had to write fouls and timeouts and stuff down and, help Case out. And as it turned out, that's how I got into coaching. I don't know who Case brought Eddie and Jimmy Lineman. He wanted someone else. He never told me who that other guy was. But that other guy didn't come. He said, do you want to stay on? And that's how I stayed into coaching.
Yeah, and I remember that because I used to be in the studio, and it's funny because I remember at one point you talk about guys getting an opportunity. So I think you're maybe on a West Coast trip or something, and what we used to do is after you now went to the bench, Brendan Brown, UB Brown's son, who's now the radio analyst for the Knicks, he was the video guy back then. Remember the cable guy used to carry the TV all around with him and stuff. And he would come in. He wasn't during the game, so he would come in and sit in sometimes with Bob Papa and do color. I remember that. Right. But you leave the radio booth to go sit on the bench, and now your life changes. Completely.
I mean, well, we stay. Byron gets hired, and if Byron had his own staff bringing guys in, I would have went back to radio. But Byron asked me and Eddie to stay on, hire Lawrence Frank, and we were his three assistants, and obviously had a rough first year, but man, we turned it on once we got Kid. And then Eddie gets the head job in Washington. And I never want to leave New Jersey, Chris. I'm a Jersey guy all the way. I love the Nets. But opportunity happened, so boom, do that, and spent 6 years down there, and here I am. But I really enjoyed. I love broadcasting. I know you know that, but coaching was a thrill to coach. Playing the league and then coaching the league was a thrill.
Going back, I want to backtrack just a second though, because you brought it up. When John Calipari gets fired, that was a weird story in its own right. You guys are in Miami. He I think Louis Katz comes in, takes him on a plane separate from you guys. Something's up. You go to Toronto, and then it involves the public speaker, the motivational guy.
Motivational speaker, with the big head. I forgot his name. Can't think of his name.
He's the
one that told us Calipari was fired.
He tells the team.
Yeah. We were supposed to meet for a motivational talk and all this other stuff. And I was on radio then, and I asked, I forget who I asked, maybe Teddy or the trainer said, would you mind if I sat in? He said, no, go ahead. And they had guys like trying to break like wood and all this other stuff. And he goes on to say, with the coaching change, we feel you guys are going to be in better condition now or something. And everybody looked and said, what coaching change? And we find out later, Calipari was let go by Louis Katz. So, yeah, I remember being on a bus in Miami, and John was going to get on the bus, and then Louis Katz says, no, you come with me. And, like, he made it back up to Toronto, but it wasn't with the team plane.
No.
It was with Louis Katz or whoever he went up there with.
It was Tony Robbins. It was Tony Robbins, by the way.
That's it, yes.
Tony Robbins told the team that Calipari got fired.
Yes, it's true. It's a true story.
And Cal had done a lot to change the culture there with the Nets. And
he got the practice facility too.
Yeah, got the facility built, and things were kind of changing. And he had a really good team for a bit there. And then remember that team with Sam Cassell and Jason Williams and Keith Van Horn, like that was an up and coming team. And then that year where he gets fired, remember Sammy got hurt. Jason Williams got hurt.
Sherman Douglas too. Sherman Douglas,
another one that got hurt. So the team kind of slipped, and they make the change. The big change, though, ends up coming because a second wave comes in when Jason Kidd, and now you're on the bench. You're an assistant coach, and you mentioned the first year where you're there, 26 wins. Then Jason shows up, and you go to 52 wins. So, all due respect to the coaches and what you do, it makes a difference when you get a guy like Jason Kidd, and he's changed a lot of people's lives, and I think he probably changed yours a little bit too.
Yes, he did. Well, I remember we after we made the finals that one year, you get a pretty nice bonus, and we called our kitchen Jason Kitchen, and then the next year we go to the finals again. My wife loved an Escalade, so we called it the Kid Calade. So, but he came in that first dinner. Yeah, we stayed at that Renaissance on Route 3 in 17 over there, and we had training camp at the facility. And the team dinner that night, Jason comes in, shakes hands with everybody, goes around everybody, shakes hands. He says, we're going to be good this year. And we were. We were scary good, that team. We just ran into a buzzsaw with the Lakers, and then the next year, I thought we were going to beat San Antonio, but we just didn't make enough shots.
Yeah.
We had 2 great years for the Nets.
You always talk about those opportunities, that you don't want to squander because you never know how close you're going to get. I always thought going back to San Antonio, really go back 2-2 in the finals in 04, in 03. With Game 5 in the Meadowlands.
At home, right.
Yeah, at home.
There you go.
That was the opportunity right there, probably.
It was right there to go up 3-2, and then even in Game 6, Chris, we had a 15 or 16-point lead in the third quarter, and we just couldn't hit a shot after that. They played a 2-3 zone, and don't forget they had David Robinson and Tim, and they just covered, baseline to baseline. Really, every shot was challenged by that zone. I think if they didn't bring zone in, the offense that we ran, I give Eddie Jordan a lot of credit. He put that Princeton offense in, and we had the horses for that. Our forwards was as quick as our guards. Kenyon and Richard Jefferson they were terrific. And we ran that to perfection, and Popovich didn't want to deal with that. He sat in the 2-3 zone, and good for him. That's why he's such a great coach. We weren't hitting. We weren't getting layups, and our fast break, we weren't getting out on that either. So, but we won that second game down there. We were after that experience we had with the Lakers, with Kobe and Shaq and them. We were ready for that year. And we won a lot of games, and then we hit a little streak where I think the guys just got not tired but just bored, and we went right through the playoffs before San Antonio. We wiped the East out. We wiped them out.
Won 10 straight at one point.
Yeah, we lost a game 2 to Milwaukee in the first round, and then won the rest of those. Beat Boston, I think, again, and then beat Detroit 4 straight to go to the finals. So we were rolling.
Yeah. And then lose game 1 in the finals, and you're thinking, all right, here we go. But then, Kidd just comes up with another great performance, and I always thought, years later they get Vince Carter, and it was kind of the one thing that team was missing. Vince Carter's great. You're going to add him to any team, he's going to be great. But that guy that had his ability, you guys were this equal opportunity, positionless team back before positionless basketball was a big thing. But you didn't have that one guy that could kind of get his own shot, like create,
Right.
get to the basket. Like I always thought Vince was the missing piece. He just came a few years too late.
I tell you what, Vince Carter. Well, think about this. He plays 22 years in the league. I mean, that's in itself is impossible, but he did it. I mean, to as a opposing coach to try to develop some type of game plan for him was impossible because his range was unlimited. And then you got to guard against that three out there. Yeah. And he had the ability to put, like you said, put the ball on the floor and just make things happen. I mean, he was a special player.
He was one of the great shooters.
Nicest guy, too. He's a great shooter.
Yeah.
And, really a quality person, too. I mean, I would, before a game, maybe, before the regular warm-ups, I'd go out on the court. We work with our players. I'd always go say hello to him. Just a great human being.
Now, you left the Nets before Vince gets there.
Right.
You went with Eddie Jordan to Washington. You mentioned that before. You ended up with Eddie again in Philadelphia for a year, and then you ended up with Eddie again at Rutgers.
Yeah.
You guys, I'm sure you had a little bit of a relationship before he joined the Nets coaching staff, but how did that bond develop, and what was it about you and Eddie that clicked so well?
It started my rookie year as a player. Eddie was on the Nets, and I get drafted by the Nets, but then he gets traded to the Lakers midway through the season. And then kind of lose touch. But we were really good friends, good teammate, good friend. And then when he came back with the Nets, when Casey took over for Calipari, it just clicked. We had the same office. I don't know if you remember back in the old facility, we had the same office. And you know how coaching is, Chris. It's 24 hours a day. I mean, we were with each other more than we were with our families. And we just clicked. Like we talked about the old times, and our families got along, and it was just it was a brotherhood between he and I. And then he gets the job in Washington, and we just come from 2 finals, and I'm like, Eddie, my family was so comfortable here in New Jersey. I've never been out of New Jersey. And he said, Gip. He called me Gip. He said, Gip, if you're serious about coaching, you'll come with me. And I was serious about coaching now.
Yeah,
I was in it. My blood was in it. I mean, it's a lot of work, but it's fun. And we go and we turned Washington around. I give him so much credit for this. Washington hadn't done much, and we suffered that first year, but we made some deals and we made the playoffs 3 straight years. And got to the second round a couple times. So it was good.
I mean, you spent 6 years there, which in today's NBA is a pretty good stretch of time to be a coach. And you got to coach in an All-Star game too, right? And then
one with the Nets and one with the Wizards.
Yeah, with the Wizards too in 2007. Mike, what are you keeping busy with now? What's your day like these days?
My day, it's kind of a boring day, Chris, and I kind of like it. I've had some back issues, so I can't run anymore. But I got a dog, a young black lab, and she keeps me busy, very energy. And I always get out in the morning for about a 5-mile walk, and I enjoy that. And then I tell people the rest of the day takes care of itself. I do some reading. I obviously talk to some friends, and before you know it, 9:30, I'm going to bed. So, or 10 o'clock when the Nets are on. But I'm still an avid Net fan, I want you to know.
I'm sure you are.
Even though the team moved to Brooklyn, I think we're going to be a lot better next year. We're going to make some noise next year.
Mike, I mean, when you look back on it, right, as a kid in Hudson Catholic, and I know your humility and your modesty and how much you love New Jersey. It's like I would imagine if I could have laid it all out to you when you were a kid going to Hudson Catholic, this is the path your life is going to take. You probably would have signed up for it right there.
I would have signed up for it. Wouldn't have changed the thing, Chris. Wouldn't have changed the thing.
Mike,
I just had a great honor. I had a great honor last Saturday where I grew up in Jersey City. I went to grade school at St. Joseph's in Jersey City, K through 8. Mm-hmm. And they named the courts after me there last Saturday, Michael Corrin Courts. Because that's where I learned my game. As a kid, just morning, noon, and night, we were over there. even when it snowed, we'd shovel the snow and practice and play. So it was quite an honor to receive last week.
That's legacy stuff right there. That's
Yeah,
kids
I'll
in
share
Jersey
that with
City
you, yeah.
they're gonna look at that name and they're gonna they're gonna Google it if they don't know it, and they're gonna for years, and they're gonna see who you
Google. You can't hide from Google, Chris. And congratulations on all you've accomplished. I mean,
well, thank you, Mike. I appreciate that, man. The time goes fast.
It does.
It just goes, man. I blink and suddenly, we talked about that one game, and then I got the job full time in 2001, and I'm going in my 22nd season.
Good for you. Good for you.
So
good for you.
Anytime you wanna make your way through Brooklyn, you got a seat in the booth with me and Capper.
Okay. Tell Cap I said hello too. He does a great job, as you know.
He does.
But Tom invited me to a game. I couldn't come this past year, but I'm going to get out to the Brooklyn. I'm going to get out there.
That's Tom Dowd.
I think we're going to be. Tom Dowd. He's been terrific talking with him several times, and I'm going to get out to a game. Chris, remember this. Going to be good next year. The Nets are going to be. You watch.
I hope so, Mike. You got it. Mike, great talking to you, buddy.
It's the same, Chris. Good luck, and we'll talk soon again. You all right? You take care.
Yep. Great to catch up with Big Mike here in the heart of the summer. Hope you enjoyed going down memory lane in Nets history with one of the all-timers. I mean, think about that. A Jersey guy who played for the Nets, broadcast for the Nets, and was a coach on the most famous Nets teams. So great to catch up with Mike O'Koren, and we look forward to seeing him more throughout the course of the season. Hope you enjoyed that conversation. We'll continue with our summer show in a couple of weeks. And for the time being, I want to thank our producer, Tom Dowd, our engineer, Isaac Lee. Remember, please subscribe. You can contact me on social media, on Twitter, @Chris Carino, on Instagram, @Chris Carino, 2 R's in Carino, all one word. Thanks again for tuning in. This has been the Voice of the Nets.